Good morning. I decided to do my project this time on the student-centered and cognitivist approach to learning. Um, I really enjoy this approach in my classroom. It seems to work very well, so I wanted to discuss it in depth. Basically, the cognitivists believe that teachers are facilitators and we are to guide students to their own understanding. And you can see the little image at the top says, less us, more them. And that's our hope when we're using this approach in the classroom. And my name is Demetria Guidry. First, let's kind of break down student-directed learning. Student-directed learning is teaching a strategy that aims to give the student greater control, ownership, and accountability over his or her own education. This is highly successful in the classroom because when it is done right, it's student-led. And the student's own curiosity leads them to higher learning, more motivation to learn, and then learning becomes enjoyable and it's at its highest. Students will retain what is learned because it applies to their individual lives. Here's just a little diagram of what self-directed learning, the facets of self-directed learning. You have ownership of learning, where the student takes their own ownership of it, and they set their own goals. Then you have extension of their own learning, where a student applies learning in new context, and they are able to learn beyond the curriculums, so more than you're even teaching, or required to teach. Management and monitoring of own learning means that they're starting to explore alternatives and make decisions, formulate questions, and generate inquiries. They're planning and managing their workload at time, and they're reflecting on their own learning and using feedback to improve it. The definition for constructivism is that students construct their own understanding by reflecting on their personal experiences. So using what they already have in their schemas and relating the new knowledge with what they already know. One of the main principles of constructivism is that learning is the search for meaning. Therefore, to be an effective teacher, you must help the student discover his or her own meaning. There are 4 beliefs historically that define this approach. One is that students learn best from one another. Students learn best in their zone of proximal development. Students learn more with direct interaction with an expert, and students should be given complex tasks with the assistance needed to complete them. Constructivists use 5 approaches to reach these goals. 1 is pure interaction. 2 is top-down processing. 3 is self-regulated learning. 4 is scaffolding. 4 is discovery learning, and 5 is scaffolding. What is top-down processing? Well, when we observe the whole image, it's when we observe the whole image first and apply existing knowledge to give it meaning. So, in essence, we are given a whole complex problem first, and while attempting to solve it, we're discovering the basic skills needed to resolve it. So, we don't give step-to-step, we don't work our way up to solving a big problem. We are given the big complex problem first and then figuring out how to solve them. It helps to draw on past experiences and knowledge to interpret what you need to do. And a perception is formed after that. The second way that cognitivists use to teach is peer interaction. They believe that students will model and challenge and learn necessary skills from one another. So this is where grouping becomes very important. Discovery learning. This is when students are encouraged to experiment through active involvement. This arouses students' own curiosity and they become more motivated to finding the answers on their own. Um, More like, experiments and things like this. But with discovery learning, we have to be sure that what they're learning about connects to their life in some way. It's something that it's kind of student-directed learning. Self-regulated learning is the ability to monitor and control our own behavior, emotions, or thoughts, and altering them in accordance with the demands of the situation. This can be one of the trickier areas to teach, and with cognitivism. They need to be able to plan, analyze, set goals, and select strategies, then practice them, and then evaluate them. So a lot of self-reflection is involved in this. And then you have scaffolding. Scaffolding would be breaking the targeted learning into smaller, attainable tasks that allow the students to build on prior learning. It's taking one step at a time until the task is complete. This would be something that a teacher would do, is break it down to help them reach the goal of solving the more complex task. Overall, with cognitivism, the goal is to create critical thinkers. We want all students to possess critical thinking skills. We want them to be able to look at a problem and pull from their internal knowledge, experiences they've had, and use what they know to solve it, and then be able to go back and reflect and see if there are changes that need to be made, or if and then at the same time teach one another, learn from one another through their experiences on how to solve a problem. Not every student's going to have the same experience, which makes this even better, but that's how they learn from each other. That's my slide on cognitivism and student-centered teaching. I think it's one of the best ways to teach in a classroom, so if you can use it, you should. Thank you so much.